Is the rapture going to happen in 2020? Well, that's what we're going to talk about today. Hi there, welcome to my channel. My name is Adam Jordan Clark, and today we are going to be talking about the rapture. And more specifically, we are going to be talking about the passage in 1 Thessalonians, and we're going to try to talk about it from a historical perspective and try to translate that into modern times and sort of make sense of it. Because when you get into these topics about the rapture, you kind of have two extreme views. The first extreme view are the people who flip through the newspaper every day. I guess now they go to internet articles, but, they flip through newspapers and try to find references to world events that would somehow show up or be relevant to Matthew chapter 24. In other words, they're trying to predict the end of the times or the rapture so they can anticipate it. But then the other extreme view are the preterist or partial preterist, and typically speaking, they either say there is no rapture or they say that the rapture has already happened of some sort. I don't know how they get there, but whatever. The point is that these are the two popular extreme views that you get when you talk about the rapture, and unfortunately, they're both wrong. Just so you know, they're both wrong. It's not just my opinion. It's literally what the Bible tells you. They're both entirely wrong. The idea that the rapture has already happened is absolutely absurd. There's no sense in believing that at all. There's no evidence for that. We'll talk about that later on in this video. Also, the idea that you should be flipping through newspapers or looking for articles, or believe it or not, the coronavirus is very popular right now. So I'm sure people are probably looking at that as some type of sign of the end time. And what you also have to understand about the signs of the end time is that the signs are not there to tell us that the end is near. It's not the purpose of the signs. If you read these passages and you pay close attention, you will find that out. But before we get too far into this video, I want to tell you about my YouTube channel and why I think you should subscribe to my YouTube channel. First of all, this is a Bible study channel. And what we do here is we study the Bible, and we try to look for a lot of history and a lot of theology and a lot of spirituality. And our goal is to grow in knowledge of the Bible. It's to increase our knowledge of the Bible. So what we're not doing is we're not taking traditional views or dogmatic views or church views and then basically trying to shove them down people's throats or reaffirm them to other people. We're not doing that. If you want that, that's fine. There are plenty of other YouTube channels that you can go to. There are plenty of churches. There are plenty of ministries that you can go to, and you can get that stuff. I mean, obviously, you can go get that stuff. Here, we're not interested in that. We're assuming that everybody already has their beliefs established. We're also assuming that people are mature enough to understand that there are different views, and we're also assuming here that people want to grow in knowledge. And grow in knowledge that's practical, at least. So we talk a lot about history and theology and spirituality, and our goal is to sort of, talk about stuff that most people are not talking about. And so we do that by taking some stuff that scholars are talking about and have been talking about for a couple hundred years, and we take information that's compatible with the church, and we try to break it down and teach it. So we're not actually teaching church views here. We're kind of going a little bit above that and sort of raising the bar of knowledge. So it's going to be interesting. So that's why you should actually continue watching the rest of this video, is because we're not really going to focus too much on the church doctrines here or the popular church beliefs. We're just going to ignore that stuff as best as possible and try to talk about some other things about this passage that scholars find interesting. So the reason why I think you should subscribe is because this is a very unique channel. There's not a lot of people out there doing this. There are not a lot of people who are wanting more information. There's not a lot of people who are putting out new information and starting new conversations. Typically what people are doing is taking one belief and then shoving that one belief down your throats. And so we don't want to do that here. So if you're looking for a channel that's interested in teaching the Bible and, focused on history and theology and spirituality and growing in your relationship with God and helping you grow in knowledge and helping you learn more things about the Bible, this is the channel for you. And that's why I think you should subscribe. So go ahead and click subscribe and click the bell notification because I publish a brand new video every single day. So let's go ahead and jump into this video. So this is 1 Thessalonians chapter 4, and if you've spent any time in Christianity or studying eschatology or rapture or preterism or partial preterism or dispensationalism, you're probably familiar with this passage. And so basically this passage right here is where the idea of the rapture comes from, and it's pretty much the only passage in the Bible, believe it or not, that supports this view of the rapture. Now, let me just tell you, the rapture, just so everybody's on the same page, is this idea that you're going to be sucked up into the sky when Jesus comes back. And a lot of people, no matter which side they're on, they always say, well, the word rapture is not in the Bible, but the concept is. Whatever. The point is that this is where it comes from. And we're just going to read over this passage really quickly so you can see where this idea sort of comes from. It talks about being caught up into the sky. And so here's what it says in verse 13. But we do not want you to be uninformed, brethren, about those who are asleep. In other words, those who are dead, so that you will not grieve as do the rest who have no hope. For if we believe that Jesus died and rose again, even so God will bring with him those who have died or fallen asleep in Jesus. For this we say to you by the word of the Lord, that we who are alive and remain until the coming of the Lord will not precede those who have fallen asleep. For the Lord himself will descend from heaven with a shout, with a loud voice of the archangel, and with the trumpet of God, and the dead in Christ will rise first. Then we who are alive will remain and be caught up together with them in the clouds to meet the Lord in the air, and so we shall always be with him, always be with the Lord. Therefore comfort one another with these words. Now, obviously, the section here about being caught up into the air, it says right here, will be whoever is not dead and you're still alive, and the Lord comes back, will be caught up into the air with him to meet Jesus in the clouds. That's what it says. And so obviously, clearly, very, very clearly, this is where the idea of the rapture comes from. By the way, this is the only place where the rapture comes from. There's a little bit in Matthew chapter 24, but this is where source criticism gets very strange, because if Matthew had read 1 Thessalonians or read some other writings from Paul, then that's probably where he got the idea, because Jesus himself did not actually teach a rapture in this particular development, that is. And one of the things you have to understand about theology is that there is a development. So as it goes from one person to another, there is some sort of development. Or improvement or updating, if you will, that happens quite often. So to sort of, kill the cat in the room or shoot the dog or whatever the saying is, first of all, a lot of preterists will look at this passage and they'll say, well, the ancient people, the Greeks, they believed that there were demons in the sky and stuff, and they believed that when they died and their bodies went up to heaven, that these demons would come along and snatch their body away, and their souls wouldn't actually make it to heaven. And so they're saying that Paul is writing here to the apostle. He's writing to this church in Thessalonica, and he's telling them, look, you guys have this belief that these demons are going to come and snatch your body away, and I'm telling you that when you die, it's okay. You're going to meet Jesus in the air. There's not going to be any demons. He'll take care of you. You will cross over to the next world. And so that's a little bit of an argument. And of course, there is some significant stuff there to think about, and that could be a particular element. However, when you read the whole book of 1 Thessalonians in context, what you begin to understand is that idea doesn't really fit well with the rest of the theology in the book, particularly the eschatology in the book. One of the biggest things that Paul talks about is the wrath of God. And he makes it very clear that he preached this gospel to them. And a part of this gospel message that he preached had some type of an apocalyptic message or some type of wrath of God. In other words, he was saying to these people, his gospel message that he preached was not only the salvation of Jesus through the cross by faith through grace, but it was also this wrath of God is going to come. It's going to be poured out on all mankind. And if you're not saved, you're not going to survive this wrath. God is going to kill everybody. And if you're not a part of the movement of God, if you're not a Christian, you will be burned up. You will not last. You will be destroyed. And so that's what he tells them. So the whole book of 1 Thessalonians, we very much see this gospel that he preached to them. And he's telling us in so many ways that he had already preached this gospel and that they had received this gospel. And so when you get to chapter 4, you have to take that context into chapter 4 and you have to understand it in the context of this being caught up into the air. So when he talks about the Lord descending, coming down from heaven, what does he actually mean? Is this referring to some type of demons in the sky, or is this referring to the wrath of God, saying that, look, when God's wrath gets poured out, he's going to come back for his people and snatch his people away from this wrath that is going to be poured out on mankind. And people who have died, they're going to be caught up into the air with the believers who are alive. In other words, whether you're dead or alive, it doesn't matter. God's coming back for his elect. Well, that's actually a very reasonable interpretation, believe it or not. And I understand this is sort of attached to dispensationalism or whatever, and that's perfectly fine. I'm sure if you've done any time studying theology, what you realize is that there are lots of truths in some false beliefs. I'm not saying that dispensationalism is entirely false. I'm just saying they're reading the same Bible that you are, and so there's going to be some amount of truth there. And ultimately what I'm telling you is that there may not be a rapture in the Bible in terms of the word rapture, but there definitely is this concept of believers who are dead and believers who are alive getting caught up into the air. And it most definitely has something to do with the gospel, and it also has something to do with the end times. And so no matter who you are, you have to do something with this. Soteriology and eschatology are linked together in the gospel. The gospel itself is both eschatological and soteriological. There's no getting around that. That's what Paul's gospel was. Maybe Jesus' gospel wasn't like that, but Paul's gospel was. And he did teach this being caught up into the sky. Now, whether or not this being caught up into the sky is physical is really where the debate should actually be. Is this a spiritual thing, meaning that he's just talking about it's symbolic here, or is he actually talking about a literal thing? Well, it obviously follows that if Paul believed that God's wrath was going to be poured out on mankind, and there's going to be this war, and people are going to be destroyed, and all hell's going to break loose, basically, it follows that he would also believe the literal snatching away of the Lord's people. I mean, I think that one clear truth in the Bible is that Jesus is in fact coming back. Acts chapter 1 makes it very clear. In the same way that Jesus ascended into heaven is the same way he's going to come back. And so all of the passages that you read in the Bible that talk about the second coming of the Lord are all physical. They're all saying Jesus is going to bodily, physically, literally come back in the clouds. And when he does, he's bringing his people with him, and the people who are on earth, whether they're dead or alive, are going to be caught up into the sky to meet with him. From my perspective, there is no getting away from this. This is clearly what the Bible teaches. What it actually means, I don't know. When that's going to happen, I don't think anybody knows. From reading the Bible itself, you can obviously see that they anticipated it happening in their lifetime. When Paul's writing 1 Thessalonians, he thinks it's going to happen in his lifetime. And he's telling people it is going to happen in their lifetime. In fact, the people had wrote to him and said, hey, this wrath of God thing and this second coming thing hasn't happened yet, and our people are starting to die. So what about the people who have died? And he says, don't worry about it. They're going to rise with you. So it's a really, really, really big problem, but it's also very, very clear in Scripture that there is some type of second coming of Jesus, number one, and that there is some type of a rapture. Very clear in Scripture. There's no getting around away from it. The people who disagree with a rapture are people who don't want to view the evidence. They don't want to look at the evidence honestly, and instead they just want to ignore stuff. And that's perfectly fine. They can ignore everything that they want to. I don't care. What I'm simply saying is that Paul himself, for sure, 100%, historically, if you argue it historically and you look for the historical evidence, the Apostle Paul 100% believed in a rapture. He believed that that those who were dead and those who were alive, Jesus Christ elect, would be caught up into the sky physically when Jesus physically comes back in the clouds. My name is Adam Jordan Clark, and if you like this video, go ahead and give it a thumbs up, because if you don't like the video, I don't know that you liked it. Don't forget to comment below if something sparked your attention, or you just want to say something or tell me a really cool story. And don't forget to subscribe and click the bell notification, because I publish a brand new video every single day on something interesting that you need to know about the Bible. My name is Adam Jordan Clark, and as always, I will see you in the next video.